Okay, Jet fans, Darrell Revis.
Is off the board.
The New York Jets select
Mekhi Becton, Louisville. You fired up to be a New York Jet?
Pressure just makes you go a little more. I kind of like pressure a little bit.
The New York Jets select.
Welcome to another edition of NFL Draft Preview with the Athletics' Dane Brugler. We're breaking down the quarterbacks today, so let's just dive right into it. Let's start at the top, and with Trevor Lawrence, most people assume, one, he's going number one overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Most people assumed he was going number one overall since basically he set foot in Death Valley at Clemson. So I guess let's just start with this, Dane. What makes him the best prospect in this class, and is he the generational talent that many have pegged him out to be?
I think that's the best way to describe him, as a generational talent. I don't know that he's a generational quarterback, but I do think he's a generational talent. Everything that you're looking for at the quarterback position, he's checking all those boxes, both physically and mentally. From a size perspective, his arm, his athleticism, his feet, his balance as a passer, everything he does is quick. And that's really what stands out the most to me. Everything that he does is quick and efficient. Now, sometimes he's too quick, and he needs to be a little more patient with his reads and, be a little more, take a step back. But, for the most part, this is a quick, efficient quarterback who has everything that you want at the position. And I think when you watch his 2018, 2019 tape and then his 2020 tape, you see a player that's getting better and better. And so this is not just a talented guy who is, kind of not a polished quarterback. He is getting better in terms of his reads, in terms of his accuracy, in terms of his ability to hit all three levels with ball placement, with touch. So you factor all of the physical and mental traits as well as the intangibles, and you have a very, very easy number one pick in this class. A player who you feel like is not even close to hitting his ceiling. So Trevor Lawrence, the easy number one pick in this draft. It would be a complete shock if he is not a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars here in a few months.
So you're telling me that Trevor Lawrence, the long presumed number one overall pick for a couple of years now, is still not even close to scratching the surface? That's what you're telling us here?
And that's part of the reason why he's going number one, is because you feel like he's only going to get better and better and better from here. And to be honest with you, I feel like that phrasing is overused, saying, well, he's only going to get better. I feel like people just throw that out there. And a lot of times it's not true. A lot of these guys don't get better. Trevor Lawrence, you feel like, is going to continue and get better because the talent is so immense and so impressive that, he's still figuring things out. Once you get him out of that Clemson offense and into a new offense, he's going to learn some new things.
If you were to poke holes, not necessarily in Lawrence's game, I mean, you look at his record, he's 34-2 in 3 seasons, thrown for 90 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, national champion in 2018. But I think that the one question in regards to Lawrence is how good his supporting cast was, and, how much that not weighs into your evaluation. But when you're watching Trevor Lawrence, you're also watching all these different NFL caliber players catch the ball, run the ball. I mean, Travis Etienne, you think about a guy like Justin Ross, who missed this past season's coming back to Clemson. I mean, there's a lot of talent. So how does that weigh into your evaluation?
And not only the on-field talent, but, the play calling and the offense and the way things are set up. Because Clemson runs a version of their quick game where everything it really helps simplify things. The ball is up and gone a lot of times. And you see that a lot. Like I said before, everything Lawrence does is fast. Sometimes he's a little too fast. And so there are times where he's not throwing with a firm base, or, he plays a little more rushed than efficient. So he needs to get better there. But it's more about how Clemson operates with their offensive play calling, with that quick game scheme. And, the topic of the surrounding talent with the receivers, the offensive line, the running backs, I feel like we're going to have that conversation about every single quarterback prospect we talk about, good and bad. Talking about Wilson and Justin Fields and Trey Lance and Mac Jones. I mean, it's a topic, because we don't talk enough about how quarterback is very much a dependent position in terms of putting up. Trevor Lawrence has 90 touchdown passes in his career at Clemson. That's tied with Deshaun Watson for second most in school history. you're not making 90 touchdown passes without a little bit of help from the offensive line to give you time, the receivers to make plays, and then a running game to help keeping the defense honest. So, it's a team effort. There's no question. And quarterback is dependent on everything else going on around him. But I don't think that doesn't mean you can't evaluate a player based off his talent alone. And is he still making the correct reads? Is he still making accurate throws? How is he conducting himself on the field? Is he using that talent to the best of his abilities, to move the offense, or is he leaving production on the field? Is some of the mental mistakes holding him back? So I still think that we can evaluate these guys independent of their supporting cast. It's not always easy, but I think we can do it.
One final question on Lawrence, and it can be a one-word answer. He's the highest graded prospect for you at the quarterback position since blank.
It's so tough to do this, because, even like going last year against Joe Burrow, Joe Burrow, nowhere near the physical talent that Trevor Lawrence is. But in terms of the way he processes things and sees the field, he's top tier. He's as good as it gets. And so how do you weigh that? I think they're in similar conversations for me personally. You could go all the way back to Andrew Luck when you try to compare these guys. It's really tough because I think it comes down to what do you value the most at the position. Lawrence, he's really talented, plus he has upside. Joe Burrow, really talented, just in a different way. So it's tough to do this. I think that he is the best quarterback we've seen in the last 5 years in terms of talent wise. But if you had to win one game right now, I'm taking a healthy Joe Burrow over Trevor Lawrence. And that's just because Joe Burrow is just a better quarterback right now. So it makes for some really interesting debates when you try to, compare him to past quarterbacks that have gone high in the draft.
After the number one quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, I feel like different evaluators have a different list. So some have clusters of players, some have a clear-cut number two prospect. Which is it for you?
For me, there's a clear-cut number two, and it's been that way since the fall. Zach Wilson out of BYU. I took a lot of heat in October when I said, "Listen, this he's in the mix for that number two quarterback this year." And then in November, my first mock draft, I had him going number two, and I took some heat for it, but that's just what I see, and I think I can justify it with the way he's played this year. And Zach Wilson is really, really interesting because. He did not face a murderer's row competition in terms of the schedule. But when you break down his skill set, he doesn't have a huge arm, but he's got a whip of an arm. So he can, fire off these strikes while on the move. He can play within the pocket, but his off-platform stuff is outstanding. His ability to make those quick decisions on the move, but still be accurate is so impressive. And so he doesn't have the ideal body type. He's a little narrow through his core, doesn't have a ton of growth potential. He's never going to be more than, 215 pounds probably. But, so the body type, not perfect, but you look at the strengths of his game, natural accuracy, the off-platform stuff. And again, I really want to, hit on this. It's the ability to make great spontaneous decisions. That's what really sells it for me. That's what Bill Walsh always talked about, legendary Hall of Fame coach. That's what separated Joe Montana from everybody else. And I'm not comparing Zach Wilson and Joe Montana necessarily, saying they're the same quarterback. But that's what Bill Walsh always talked about is, what separated the top quarterbacks that he worked with in his mind is the ability to make those great spontaneous decisions. To me, with Zach Wilson, that's what he offers with his ability to move around, make plays with his legs and his feet. He's putting the ball in a spot. And so does he need to develop with some of his reads and some of his movements and being a little more efficient from within the pocket? Yes, absolutely. I'm not saying Zach Wilson is a polished player by any means, but the way his arm works and his ability with his legs and his arm, I'm going to bet on those traits.
So with Wilson, what is realistic? If you were the Jets and you did end up selecting Zach Wilson number 2 overall, what could you expect from day one, considering the level of competition that he played and just his skill set matched up in this Mike LaFleur offense as well?
I think you expect him to come in and compete from day one to get on the field. You don't decide when you draft him and say, okay, well, he's going to start on the bench or he's going to start midseason or whatever. You don't make those decisions before you get to training camp. Let him get to training camp. Let him fight it out. I think this is a guy he's well versed in different different schemes with what BYU asked him to do. You watch the tape, you see them traditional I formation under center. You see 5 wide option plays. You see, it's an RPO-based offense. So, I think that is something that it will translate, heavy play action scheme. So he was asked to do a little bit of everything in that BYU offense. And I think that'll help him adapt to the NFL playbook. And, whoever drafts Zach Wilson, I think he's going to be a guy that's going to come in and, compete. We don't know what that quarterback depth chart's going to look like, in New York in August. But he's a guy that I think is going to compete for snaps in training camp.
So one last question about Wilson. Do you feel like the biggest question in regards to his play is his size? And second, what about him, and we'll get into this a little more, makes him your clear-cut number 2 as opposed to being in a cluster with some of the other prospects?
Yeah, the narrow frame is certainly a worry. I think he plays an overdrive sometimes. Just needs to stay within himself. He'll, prematurely bail from a pocket before he needs to. Sometimes his mechanics will get a little wild. That doesn't bother me as much because I think he's naturally accurate. And so, even if his shoulder or his hips are a little off, he's still able to be accurate with his passes. The body type, that does lead to some durability concerns. He had labrum surgery on his throwing shoulder, which was actually an injury from high school that he had cleaned up when he got to college. So, it's something that you worry about with a guy that size. But, he didn't miss many games in college. So I think the biggest reason why, for me personally, and, there are plenty of smart people around the NFL who I trust who believe, there's another quarterback who's the number 2, whether that's Justin Fields or Trey Lance or whoever. For me, Zach Wilson is the guy because of what I mentioned earlier, and that's the ability to make the great spontaneous decision. To me, that separates him from Fields and Lance and the rest of these quarterbacks. The movement skills, off platform, the ability to be naturally accurate. I think it really fits what teams are looking for in today's NFL.
Lawrence 1, Wilson 2. That leaves Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and Mac Jones. Do you have them in the order I just said? And how much leapfrogging can there be between now and April's draft?
Well, yeah, and I think that it's really tough with these next 3 quarterbacks because I think Lance and Fields, to me, they're kind of neck and neck fighting for the 3 and 4 spots. Lance is such an unprecedented evaluation when you talk about a player who's got 17 career starts. Okay, well, Mac Jones has 17 career starts, but Mac Jones did it in the SEC. Trey Lance did it against FCS competition. A lot of times those, North Dakota State, they'll face at least one FBS team. Trey Lance doesn't have that. Carson Wentz, we got a chance to see at the Senior Bowl. Trey Lance doesn't have that. It's a player that's supremely gifted with his athleticism for that size, his ability to make throws. It seems like he processes things very well. I think he has some natural passing instincts, but it's still a player that, there are a lot of one read and run type of plays on his film. The North Dakota State offense, they ran, it's still a run first offense. They're not going to change that based on the quarterback. So, there are a lot of things that I thought helped protect him in college that it's going to be completely different in the NFL. But nonetheless, the talent is outstanding. And so it's going to take a little bit of time, I think, so he can adjust to the play speed and some of the complexities of the NFL. But I see a player who's poised, who makes smart decisions, and he's still young. I mean, he doesn't turn 21 until May. So he's 20 years old right now. And so the meager experience is something that is really tough to reconcile, but the talent is off the charts. And so I think, Trey Lance, some teams will have him as a number 2 quarterback. I absolutely believe that. Justin Fields, similar conversation in terms of teams are all over the map. Some teams really like him. Some teams see him as, they don't see him as a first round pick. They see him as a guy that you consider in rounds 2 through 4. So it's a really difficult conversation when there's such variance on these players. But with Justin Fields, I think he's an easy player to like when you look at the talent, the competitive toughness. a player that when things are on time, his tempo, his rhythm, his accuracy is on point. And I thought that Ohio State offense really helped keep things on schedule. But when things got off schedule, that's where he struggled a little bit. When that first target's taken away, that when he's forced to move his eyes and improvise, he just wasn't as comfortable. He didn't execute at the same type of level. And so for me, that's why, Justin Fields isn't 2 for me. He's in that 3-4 discussion. Now, I think he can get better in those areas. I think he will get better in those areas. And the talent is, you're going to bet on that talent. And the intangibles are what you can get on board with. A type of guy that's can rally the team. He's a true leader in the huddle. So there's a lot of things going for both Trey Lance and Justin Fields. I think it just comes. A big part is going to be the interviews and finding out, where are they mentally in their development. With both Fields and Lance, you would assume that. One would assume that Fields would be more ahead, just in terms of playing at Ohio State the last 2 years. But you talk to people that are close with Trey Lance, and you get a better sense for what the coaches asked him to do in terms of preparation and understanding coverages and setting protections. And he might actually be a little more advanced, even though it came at the FCS level. So these 2 quarterbacks are fascinating, and the interview process over the next month is really going to carry a lot of weight with how teams ultimately grade these 2 players.
And then where does Mac Jones fit into the equation of this quarterback class as well?
Yeah, there's a lot to like about Mac Jones. I think the easiest way to sell somebody on Mac Jones is, okay, let's list the most important traits at the quarterback position. At the top, the first 2, mental processing and accuracy. Those are the 2 most important traits. Mac Jones has both of those. And so you just have to decide, is he good enough in the other areas where, it's not, those other areas aren't going to hold him back, because he has the first 2. He's very accurate. He can anticipate. He can make quick decisions. He's poised in the pocket. He understands what the defense is doing. Yes, he did have elite talent around him with the running back, the running game, the offensive line, the receivers, the play calling. He still has to make the reads. He still has to make the throws, and he did it at a very high level. So he's not the athlete, ideally, that you're looking for. He doesn't, there's nothing explosive about his game, nothing dynamic about his game, but he's smart, he's efficient, and he doesn't make mistakes. And so there are certain teams that will value that over some other teams that are looking for more of an upside type of quarterback. So it's a really interesting juxtaposition between some of these quarterbacks. And I think it might come down to what your roster looks like. If you're a team like the Saints, kind of a ready-made offense where you just need to plug in that quarterback, Mac Jones will make a lot more sense as opposed to another team where maybe the offensive personnel, the offensive line, the targets, the running game isn't as established, and you need your quarterback to do a little bit more. So Mac Jones, I think, is going to be a first-round pick for some teams, and maybe a guy that teams don't consider as highly, just based off the personnel and where they are with their roster management.
That is fantastic breakdowns. And I got a couple questions. You mentioned Lance first, so let's just start with him. You kind of talked about it, how difficult of an evaluation it is for someone that was a redshirt freshman, then had a fantastic 2019. I mean, you look at his stats. I think I have him up here real quick. 2,786 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, not a single interception. Then also over 1,000 rushing yards and 14 rushing touchdowns. And also he won the Walter Payton and Jerry Rice Awards in 2019. If your name is with Walter Payton or Jerry Rice, let alone both, you did something right. So for Trey Lance to have that kind of numbers and then really have this season taken from him, how difficult of an evaluation is it? And also, based on hearing what you said about Trey Lance, do you think he's best suited to sit behind somebody for a year, or we just don't know the answer to that because he's such an enigma?
Well, like I said, it's unprecedented. We've never seen a situation like this. He set the NCAA all-division record for most pass attempts in a season without an interception. What he did in 2019 is just remarkable. I mean, you laid out the stats. It's really, really impressive. And it's also worth noting that they won a national title that year. They were he went 16-0. that season. And then he also picked up a win this past year. They had a 1-game season, basically 1-game fall season. And he didn't look amazing in that one game. There was obvious rust, but I think it says something that he played his best in the fourth quarter once he got settled in a little bit, and you could really kind of show off his talent. So, there's so much going for him. It's just, how do you reconcile the lack of experience and lack of competition? It's something that teams are going to value differently. And I think just looking on the surface, you would say, okay, well, yeah, he needs to sit. He needs to learn. But you talk to, I was talking to his quarterback coach, Quincy Avery, a few weeks ago, and he told me he feels like he's more ready than any of these quarterbacks. And of course, he's his quarterback trainer. He's going to say that, but he explained why, saying how far advanced he is in terms of between the years with what North Dakota State asked him to do in his preparation in terms of understanding the defense and breaking down what he was asked to do. So, in some ways, I think he might even be more prepared. And I think that's going to show through during the interview process, which is going to help Trey Lance. So really interesting evaluation here because the resume is unbelievable. But again, it's the lack of experience against top competition is something that we've never really seen before. And we've seen big level quarterbacks come from the FCS level, with Carson Wentz and Jimmy Garoppolo, go back to, Steve Air McNair. I mean, we've seen it before, but not a guy that was a redshirt sophomore that was only 20 years old and had only 17 career starts. Just that is really rare and something that, some teams are going to be maybe a little skittish about that. Other teams are going to buy in.
So one more question on Lance before I hit you with a Fields question, a Jones question, and then we can get to some fan questions. With Lance, let's say he has a great pro day. Obviously, he's wearing shorts and a T-shirt, so most quarterbacks you would assume look good. But let's say he looks the part. How much of a hype train can there be between now and April to where people are saying, well, Trey Lance might not only be, the third or fourth best quarterback, he might be, let's say, the second best quarterback behind someone like Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah, and first off, I've been saying this since the fall. The number one quarterback, I think, is set. Quarterbacks 2, 3, 4, and now 5. There's not going to be a consensus. Okay, every team's going to have a different order, based off of what they're looking for, what they evaluate the position, their appetite for risk. So, I don't think there's going to be any type of consensus on quarterbacks 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a lot of differing opinions, and I'm not even sure that the pro day is going to necessarily charge up that hype train even more. I think the things that are really going to create some movement with teams with these quarterbacks is going to happen behind closed doors, and that's really it's going to happen between computers, and that's going to be the Zoom interviews. And it's interesting because this year teams are only allowed to talk to each prospect 5 times virtually through the Zoom. And, in the past, it was limitless. I mean, you could take these guys out for dinner before the pro day, invite them to your facility, go work them out on campus. I mean, there's so many ways that you could work them out, get to know them better, understand who they are as people and as players. This year, it's limited. And so each team's going to have to really, boil it down to some hard questions about what they want to figure out about these players. And I think those interviews over the next month are really going to determine the way these quarterbacks are graded from team to team and the order they come off the board.
All right, and then in terms of Justin Fields, it feels like you said this to me before too. There are people out there who either love him or they hate him. And if you watch the Clemson game, you love him. Threw for 6 touchdowns. If you watch him against Indiana earlier in the season, you're probably like, I don't know what people are seeing in Justin Fields. But Justin Fields in Columbus, 63 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 20-2, a Heisman Trophy finalist in 2019. And you said it in your answer earlier. It's easy to like Justin Fields, so it seems. So why does it feel like whenever somebody's talking about Justin Fields, it feels like the stock arrow is pointing down compared to Wilson or Lance, and even Mac Jones, where it feels like their arrows are pointing up?
Well, I think the perception is either you love him or you hate him, when in reality, with all these quarterbacks, it's not that black and white. It's, there's a lot of middle ground where, you can really like a player while also thinking they need to get better in certain areas. Because I really like Zach Wilson, but I do think he needs to get better in some areas. Same thing with Trey Lance, with Mac Jones, and with Justin Fields. I mean, there's so much to like about Fields. He looks the part. He's a well strapped together athlete. I think within structure, his touch, his accuracy are outstanding. Strong enough arm. He can drive the football when he steps into his throws. He creates that torque through his hips, so he can just, throw it a lot more ropes than rainbows down the field. Really, really accurate down the field as a deep passer. He recognizes DB assignments. You can see it the way he places the football away from defenders. And I think he's, the toughness, watching that Clemson game, the toughness that he showed, really, really outstanding. He was a team captain. Ryan Day speaks really highly of his mindset and the way he carries himself. And then the production, you look at it at his career record, 20-2 at Ohio State as a starter. So, his only 2 losses were both in the college football playoffs. So this is a winner. This is a guy that is a leader. The intangibles are there. It just comes down to, feeling great about his development above the ears above the neck, and being able to develop that field vision, become a little more diversified with the way he sees the field. I think he can get there. It's just a little bit more of a projection in my mind compared to Zach Wilson or some of these other quarterbacks.
All right, let's hit some fan questions now, because there's some good ones out there, and let's keep on the quarterback theme here. Justin wants to know, how big of an issue is it that Zach Wilson played against lesser competition? And obviously there are examples on both sides of the argument here in terms of players that succeeded and played lesser competition. Josh Allen comes to my mind of a couple of years ago. And so that's just one pro example. There are other con examples, but to you, or as an evaluator, is this an issue?
It's all relative. It's the same question about, okay, well, Mac Jones, how do you evaluate him with the elite talent that he had around him? It's kind of like one way or the other. If you talk to some people about Mac Jones, well, his talent props him up. And then you talk to some people about Zach Wilson. Oh, well, he didn't play anybody. Well, okay. So you say the same thing about, with Mac Jones, with Trevor Lawrence at Clemson and Justin Fields at Ohio State. There's certainly talent around him that helped them. And at BYU, there's no question he had talent around him, but it's all relative, where he doesn't have 5 stars around him at BYU. So even though he's not facing that top tier competition, who else on that offense is going to be a top 50 draft pick? No one. Maybe the left tackle. I think he has a chance to be a top 100 pick, maybe. But, that's it. We're not talking about an offense that is loaded with future NFL players. So even though he did not face top competition, and in a perfect world, we'd have been able to see him play, 10 games against 10 really good defenses at the college level. It's just not that easy. I think we can still evaluate the quality of throws, his thought process, things like that, without just saying, "Oh, it doesn't matter," because he's not facing top competition. So I think these discussions are all relative in terms of competition, and not every prospect is gift wrapped to us in transparent wrapping paper. Sometimes it takes a little bit of digging to figure them out.
Well said. I like this next question. This question, had it not been asked, I would have asked you this. Rafa wants to know, is Zach Wilson a better prospect than Sam Darnold?
Whew.
And also, let me add this in there. Where would Sam rank if he were a prospect this year in your top 5?
Yeah, and it's so hard because obviously we have a sample size of Sam Darnold as an NFL player. And so, it's hard to eliminate that from our thoughts completely and only focus on, what we thought of him coming out of college. I was a big Sam Darnold fan. He was my top quarterback that year, just based off of the talent. And I still think that talent is there, and I'm still a big believer in him. But he went to a situation that was tough with the Jets where, he didn't always You wonder about the talent around him, the offensive line, the coaching, what they were asking him to do. You really wonder about just where he is in his development. Is he taking a step back? Is he able to still realize that talent? So I've got a lot of questions about Sam Darnold because I love the talent, his ability to throw with anticipation, his ability to move and improvise, reset his eyes, and be accurate down the field. I mean, these things he put on tape. I did worry about the turnovers. That was something on his USC tape that you worried about, and that's something that is translated. So some guys are able to, cut back on some of those bad mistakes and get better. Matt Ryan being one of them. Threw a lot of picks at Boston College, was able to become a little bit more conservative and thoughtful with his decisions in the NFL. Sam Darnold, not there yet. So it's a really tough discussion because, again, we have a sample size of Sam as an NFL player. I think if I have to choose between the two in terms of just as prospects, I think it'd be a tight race. I really do. I think they'd be graded very, very similar for me.
So with that being said, before we get to the final fan question, I'm going to have you put your GM hat on for a minute here. You have three options.
Okay.
Option A, you stay at number 2, you pick a non-quarterback player. So you want to take someone like Penei Sewell, you want to take your top graded offensive playmaker for you, Kyle Pitts, whoever may that be. Doesn't matter. Option 2, you trade down from 2, you keep Sam as your quarterback in 2021. Let's say in this hypothetical, you move back to number 8 with the Panthers, you get their second-round pick and future capital. Or option 3, you stay at 2, you take a quarterback. For you, that would be Zach Wilson, and then you would trade Sam Darnold. Which are you doing and why?
Well, yeah, if I'm Joe Douglas, obviously I've been in this role for over a year now, so I think I have a good feel for Sam and just what his development been like. Obviously, we see what happens on Sundays on the field. But what about Sam between games, during the week, in meeting rooms, and where is he mentally? That would give me a much better assessment of where he is and whether or not he can ascend under this new coaching staff, and when there's better talent around him. So I think that's first and foremost. If I was not convinced, even if I thought he could ascend, if I was not convinced that he would, then I think the option to reset the franchise with a new quarterback is the direction I would want to go. And then it comes down to, okay, is there a quarterback in this class that I feel strongly enough about that I feel can be that quarterback? And in my opinion, Zach Wilson could be that guy. And, obviously the medicals have to check out. We have to be comfortable with, his shoulder. I want to be able to talk to him, find out more about, how he'd be a fit culture-wise with our new coaching staff. So there's a lot of, connecting the dots here that we would need to do. I don't think it's as simple as just, oh yeah, he's the guy. As GM, there's so many different factors you have to really consider here. But I think I would lean towards resetting the franchise with a new quarterback. And, with what we know, with the knowledge that I have right now talking to you, I think Zach Wilson would be that guy.
All right. Fair enough. Well said. And we're going to talk about different scenarios and whatever. And as you can see, Dan said, giving Sam protection, could we see a nice jump? That's like the biggest question. And we're actually going to skip over this, and we're going to go in the wide receiver direction for the final question. But I just want it to be known that we will be breaking down different scenarios for the Jets when we do our 7-round mock draft in a couple weeks. I mean, there's a lot of doors that we can open, and we plan on opening them. But to wrap up the quarterbacks episode, which has been a juicy episode, we're actually going to focus on some wide receivers. Michael wants to know what rounds 2 through 4 wide receiver prospects should the Jets be looking for. It seems like San Francisco likes players who can separate, but Green Bay likes bigger receivers. And I think Michael is saying this because Mike LaFleur, the Jets offensive coordinator, comes from San Francisco, where Kyle Shanahan runs the Shanahan offense. But then Mike's older brother, Matt LaFleur, is the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. And there's clearly two different kind of styles there. So with that being said, Dane, are there some receiver prospects rounds 2 through 4 that you think that Jets fans should become a little more familiar with?
Definitely. And, we'll see how active they are over the next month in terms of, adding or subtracting from that wide receiver depth chart. But a player I'd love to see in New York, Amari Rodgers out of Clemson. He reminds me a lot of Deebo Samuel. So if we want to make that San Francisco connection, that could be it. He's a guy that is very, very reliable, catches the ball in stride, really does a nice job quickly becoming a ball carrier. And he looks like a running back with his play speed and his play toughness. So he has a little bit of shake to him. He can make guys miss. There's maybe some question about, can he be an outside receiver or is he a slot only? All I know is this guy's a big time competitor with the play strength, the acceleration that reminds me a lot of Deebo Samuel. So I think that would be, a natural fit, a guy that can, help you out on special teams as well. And then another player who could maybe give you that deep threat if that's what they want to go, the direction they want to go. De'Ami Brown out of North Carolina, who averaged over 20 yards a catch the last 2 years. He's one of the best double move receivers in this draft. Has a real knack for it, really, really skilled, fast. He can track the football, needs to be more consistent in terms of the underneath game and just, eliminating those drops and being more consistent. But, what we're talking about probably in the third round. And so if I'm getting a talent like this, I think he could be a guy that takes the top off of defense. Could be my deep threat, a guy that can really stretch out the secondary, the coverage, and help out my other receivers, create some underneath passing windows just with the threat of his deep speed. So De'Ami Brown, I think, is an ascending player that isn't getting enough love when talking about the top receivers in this class.
And we will absolutely be breaking down the top receivers in this class as we inch forward to the draft. Dane, that was a juicy quarterback episode. Jets fans are going to have their hands full. They're going to have their ears full, but that's okay. We're here to bring the juice. One last question for you.
Yeah.
Non-draft related. The Jets, they have the second most projected cap space in the NFL. You kind of mentioned free agency. It's around the corner. Is there a player that you would like to see in green and white? I'm putting you on the spot here. We haven't even discussed this. So if there's not, then no, then it's fine. But if there is a player, I'm just kind of curious.
I haven't put much thought into it, to be honest. I mean, I think one thing that we have to consider here is at quarterback. Is there a quarterback, if they go in the direction of moving on from Sam Darnold and bringing in a rookie, you obviously need to bring in some type of veteran. And who, is that going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick? Is that going to be, who is that quarterback? So I think that might not be, we're not talking about a huge signing here in terms of, contract wise, but that's going to be a pretty important decision. Is it Alex Smith? Is it, who is it? Who is that, that quarterback that's going to come in? And, even if you are sticking with Sam Darnold, who's going to help that quarterback room, just in terms of pushing the young guys and bringing an almost like an extra coach in there. You want that veteran awareness. So I think that could be one of the more understated, directions that the Jets could go in free agency.
All right. I dig it. We'll see what happens right around the corner. March 15th, the negotiation window opens. March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. Free agency opens at 4 p.m. The Jets right now, second most projected cap space. I know we're talking draft, but the off-season is going to be very exciting, a lot of moving pieces, and we'll break it down and mostly here with the draft, all here with the draft. And that was another episode of NFL Draft Preview with The Athletics. Dane Brugler. Dane, thanks a lot. See you next week.
Thanks, Ethan.